All right, we have some breaking news. Somehow JD Vance and Marco Rubio just started beef with another one of our longtime allies on Twitter, not only making a fool of themselves, but honestly making a fool of the US on the global stage. You know it's bad when one of Germany's official Twitter accounts has to fact check JD Vance and say, dude, we've learned from our history. I don't know why you're supporting our far-right party. So I want to talk about the dangers of US politicians not only supporting, but emboldening and enabling far-right politicians across the globe, and in Germany in particular. Why Germany? But also, I want to talk about what happens when the world stops trusting the United States, because sometimes I talk in these abstract platitudes. I talk about diplomacy being eroded, but what does that actually mean? Because this actually affects the jobs of everyday Americans. This actually increases the cost of groceries when some of our longtime allies don't trust us enough to trade with us. So let's break all of this down, but just to lay the groundwork, before we talk about Germany hitting back at Rubio and JD Vance, check out what happened in the middle of the night, because Australia's center-left Labour Party retains power in a vote seen as a test of anti-Trump sentiment. And I know all the Trump supporters in the comments will be like, you're obsessed, why does everything have to relate back to Trump? But genuinely, the opposition party, the right-wing candidate in Australia, was running as a Trump light. He was running as a populist light, and we are seeing this pattern emerge all across the globe. Pierre Poilievre lost in a huge way in Canada less than a week ago, and he was also sort of a Trump-light populist figure. Now, don't be mistaken, we still have Viktor Orban, we still have Erdogan, we still have Bukele, we still have all of these far-right populists, but it is nice to see that over the past week, there is pushback. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has secured a second term in office in what appears to be an election wipeout for his conservative rivals, as voters chose stability over change against a backdrop of global turmoil inflicted much by President Donald Trump. And the dude who was running as a right-wing candidate in Australia, again, was a Trump light. So this could very easily be seen as a rebuking of MAGA Trumpism across the globe. And now we're entering a phase only 100 days into his presidency where entire elections in other countries are being defined by how deeply unpopular Donald Trump is. So, I mean, Canada hates us, obviously Denmark, and then by extension, Greenland hates us. Most of Europe, I think, is souring on us. Even Germany had to respond to JD Vance. I'll get there in 1 second. But what does it mean? Why do we care if Australia hates us? By the way, make sure you drop a like if you appreciate these informative videos. But why does it matter? Why does it matter if Australia hates us? Because when countries like that stop trusting us and when our trade relationships break down, that directly leads to prices going up. Like, we've spent the past 100 years building supply chains that are mutually beneficial for all countries. And if you want to argue that there are imbalances with China, sure, we could slap China in the face. I'm totally down for that. But we don't have to also slap Canada and Australia and every other country in the face as collateral. We actually benefit from trade with Canada and Australia and these countries. We've built solid supply chains. So when these supply chains are disrupted, you will feel that when your local manufacturer begins to lay people off, because export markets dry up and because we can't make everything in America. Even Trump knows that. Trump understands that we can't make everything in America. He understands comparative advantage. I've heard him touch on it, even though he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he still is just sticking with the tariffs, and people will feel that. This will destabilize entire economies, and that's my little TED talk about how this affects everyday Americans. Sometimes I feel like I get caught up too much in these like broad diplomatic talking points where I talk about the erosion of relationships between Canada and the US, but we need to talk about how that actually affects people. That's the message. But read this. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the German intelligence agency designation of the far-right AfD party, quote, tyranny in disguise. You know, let's just read these tweets because it's honestly kind of a sad day for America. It's kind of dangerous when our Secretary of State is accusing Germany of tyranny because their intelligence agency is trying to stop an extremist party. Republicans always inverse reality in that way. So this says, from Marco Rubio, Germany just gave its spy agency new powers to surveil the opposition. That's not democracy, it's tyranny in disguise. What is truly extremist is not the popular AfD, which took second in the recent election, but rather the establishment's deadly open border immigration policies that the AfD opposes. Germany should reverse course. Dude, if Marco Rubio existed 100 years ago, he would be saying, Germany just arrested a young populist leader for something called the beer hall push. All he did was try to overthrow the government. Arresting this man is tyranny. Of course, the beer hall push was what got Hitler arrested. When he was in jail, he wrote Mein Kampf, and that was the impetus of everything else. Why is this dude defending a far-right party in Germany? Is Marco Rubio being held hostage or whatever? Republicans against Trump said, nothing to see here. Just the Secretary of State attacking one of our strongest allies, falsely accusing it of tyranny in disguise, all in defense of a far-right, Holocaust-denying, pro-Putin party. This is insane. Chris Jackson says, you are in no position to lecture anyone, Marco, and the fact that you are now trying to prop up the AfD shows how weak you really are. Someone said the AfD literally believes someone like Marco Rubio should not be American because he came from immigrants. Yeah, they're like a far-right extremist party. Marco, you have many jobs right now. I don't recall any of them being an election-interfering douchebag. This takes us on to JD Vance. JD Vance then directly quote-tweeted Marco Rubio and said, the AfD is the most popular party in Germany. Not true. They lost the election, and by far the most representative of East Germany. Now the bureaucrats are trying to destroy it. The West tore down the Berlin Wall together, and it has been rebuilt, not by the Soviets or the Russians, but by the German establishment. Now, the party, AfD, has deep ties to Putin world, deep ties to Russia, and was defended by Elon Musk, by JD Vance, by Marco Rubio, by everybody in Trump world, to nobody's surprise. And the German party responded. They responded. The German Foreign Office said, this is democracy. This decision is a result of a thorough and independent investigation to protect our Constitution and the rule of law. It is independent courts that will have the final say. We have learned from our history that right-wing extremism needs to be stopped. Trump officials are attacking Germany for enforcing their own constitution against actual extremists. Again, this is absolutely disgusting. JD Vance and Marco Rubio are gaslighting and trying to embolden this far-right party in Germany, even though they lost. How is JD Vance going to claim that it's the most popular party in Germany when they just lost? And of course, when Marco Rubio makes his tweet, even though he's appealing to it's all just Nazi-esque. You are trying to embolden a far-right party, and while doing so, you try to otherize immigrants in Germany. Can Germany streamline its immigration policy? Absolutely. From everybody I've talked to, Germany can have better immigration policies. Most countries can, but it seems like he's trying to otherize immigrants, and it's very, very scary. And I just want to say, this goes back to torching relationships with allies. When we start doing that, it's worse than bad headlines like this one right here. It genuinely means fewer trade deals, less stability, less capital investment into the United States, less faith in the US dollar, and de-dollarization is something that's been on the top of everybody's minds lately. That would hurt a lot. So when people say the world hates Donald Trump, it goes beyond his personality. They genuinely don't want to work with the US, and that's a scary thing. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace out.